Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating paper that argues that meaning itself has become the single most critical resource for survival and success. And we're not talking about philosophy here. This is all about strategy.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a paradox that I'm sure you felt. We are absolutely drowning in data, right? We have all the analytics, the predictive models, just endless streams of information. But does it feel like we're any better at understanding what's really going on? For many, the answer is no. Our ability to find the signal in all that noise actually seems to be shrinking.
And this isn't just a vague feeling. The source material frames this as a full-blown strategic crisis. The world is just moving and changing faster than we can make sense of it. And this gap, this lag between knowing things and actually understanding them, is what leaves even the smartest organizations totally adrift.
Now, this diagram from the paper, it just nails the problem. It's called the sense-making collapse cycle. Just follow that dotted line. As the speed of world events picks up, we get hit with this informational flood, right? But look what happens next. We eventually hit a collapse of sense-making. It's a vicious cycle. The faster things move and the more data we get, the less we actually understand, until we're stuck in total strategic paralysis.
So if piling on more and more information isn't the answer, then what is? Well, the paper argues it's something way more fundamental. It's something that acts like a compass when all the maps are completely useless. Strategic meaning.
Let's be really clear what we mean by this. This isn't some fuzzy, abstract idea. Think of strategic meaning as the invisible architecture of your organization, or even your country. It's that shared, bedrock understanding that allows a group of people to look at pure chaos, make really tough calls, and actually move forward together with purpose.
This quote right here. This really gets to the absolute heart of the argument. Meaning isn't some nice-to-have thing you sprinkle on top after the real work of strategy is done. No, the paper argues it's the foundation. It's the very ground you build on. Without it, any plan you make is built on sand, just waiting to crumble.
So let's see how this actually plays out in the real world, because the research gives some incredibly powerful examples. This is where the theory gets very, very real. On the corporate side, the contrast is just stark. You had Nokia. They had amazing world-class tech, but they suffered what the paper calls a semantic collapse. They basically lost the plot. They couldn't answer the simple question, who are we anymore? And that confusion led to disaster. Then you have IBM. They completely reinvented themselves over and over again, from hardware to services to AI, but their core meaning, their identity of solving complex problems, never, ever changed. That consistency is what allowed them to survive.
And this idea doesn't just apply to companies. It scales all the way up to the national level. Singapore is maybe the ultimate example of what the paper calls meaning engineering. I mean, just look at this model. It shows how you take the raw material of, say, geographic vulnerability and run it through this engine to produce a strategy. Faced with just impossible odds when they were founded, Singapore's leaders deliberately built a national story, a framework for survival.
And at the core of that story is this incredibly powerful idea. Complacency doesn't just mean risk, it means death. Think about that. When that's the shared understanding, it lets the country make these really tough long-term decisions that would be torn apart by politics anywhere else. The fundamental meaning of their existence is a given, so they can focus all their energy on the best methods to ensure it. All right, so if meaning is so vital, how do you actually build it? This isn't something you just hope for. The paper lays out a really practical, actionable framework for engineering it on purpose.
The whole process really starts with asking 4 questions that sound simple but are incredibly profound. First, what really matters to us? Second, what's the story that connects our past to our future? Third, based on that story, what hard choices and trade-offs are we willing to make? And finally, how do we keep this meaning alive over the long haul?
And here you can see the whole thing laid out in the strategic meaning cycle. It's a process you can repeat. You start up in quadrant 1, sifting through all the noise to figure out what actually matters. Then you move over to quadrant 2 to build a coherent story around it. From there, you go down to quadrant 3, where you make real commitments based on that story. And finally, you land in quadrant 4, where the work is all about sustaining that meaning and adapting it over time.
And that brings us to the final and I think the most powerful takeaway from this whole thing. What the ultimate stakes really are in this new strategic game.
This is such a stark warning. Let me just put it another way. If you don't deliberately create your own meaning, you will be forced to live inside a story that someone else wrote for you. You become a follower, always reacting to a world that others have defined, heading toward a future you never chose.
So the bottom line is this. In a world where the main battles are fought over narratives and interpretation, the ability to create your own meaning isn't just about having a clear plan. It's about autonomy, it's about sovereignty, it's about the freedom to chart your own course.
And so that leaves us with one final, challenging question to wrap up this explainer. And I want you to really think about this in your own world. Are you, your team, your organization just passively consuming the narratives that are handed to you? Or are you actively, deliberately, and strategically creating the meaning you need to navigate whatever comes next? Because the answer to that question might just define your future.